We now move on to the third video of this section, making Gantt charts. In the previous video we looked at making a box and whisker plot. In this video we'll be going ahead and creating the Gantt chart using Python. We'll first load test data and then instantiate the Gantt class with test data. We'll then move on to process all tasks by plotting horizontal bars on the axes, and finally format the X and Y axis for this dataset, and we also tighten the layout. One form of very widely used visualization of time-based data is a Gantt chart. It's almost exclusively used to visualize work breakdown structures in project management. This chart is loved by managers for its descriptive value and not so loved by employees, especially when the project deadline is near. This kind of chart is very straightforward. Almost everyone can understand and read it, even if it's overloaded with additional information. A basic Gantt chart has a time series on the x-axis and a set of labels that represent tasks or subtasks on the y-axis. Task duration is usually visualized either as a line or a bar chart, extending from the start to end time of a given task. If subtasks are present, one or more subtasks have a parent task, in which case the total time of a task is aggregated from the subtasks in such a way that overlapping and gap time is accounted for. So, in this video we'll be covering the creation of the Gantt chart using Python. Let's now get ready to design a Gantt chart. There are many full-fledged software applications and services that allow you to make very flexible and complicated Gantt charts. We'll try to demonstrate how you could do it in pure Python, not relying on external applications, yet achieving neat-looking and informative Gantt charts. The Gantt chart shown in the example does not support nested tasks, but is sufficient for simple work breakdown structures. This code example will allow us to demonstrate how Python can be used together with matplotlib to render the Gantt chart. We'll perform these steps. We first load test data that contains a set of tasks and instantiate the Gantt class with test data. Here, each task contains a label and the start and end time. Then we process all tasks by plotting horizontal bars on the axes. Next, we format the X and Y axes for the data we're rendering. Then we go ahead to tighten the layout and show the Gantt chart. So we start reading this code from the bottom after the condition that checks we are in main. After we instantiate the Gantt class, giving it test data, we set up the necessary fields of our instance. We save task data in the self tasks field. We then create our figure and axes to hold the charts we create in future. Then we call show on the instance that walks us through the steps required to render the Gantt chart. Plotting bars requires iteration where we apply the data about the name and duration of each task to the matplotlib pyplot bar h function, adding it to the axis at self.ax. We place each task in a separate channel by giving it a different, i.e. incremental, bottom argument value. Also, to make it easy to map tasks to their names, we cycle over the divergent color maps that we generated using the colorbrewer2.org tool. The next step is to configure the figure, which means that we set up the format date on the x-axis and tickers, positions and labels on the y-axis to match the tasks plotted by matplotlib.pyplot.barh. Finally, we add a grid and a legend. At the end, we call plot.show to show the figure. So now we're ready to run the code and we move on to the command terminal. This code will render a simple, neat-looking Gantt chart like this one. Wonderful! In this video, we saw how to make a Gantt chart. In the next video, we'll learn how to make error bars.